Welcome back to video 2 of our 3-part series. In today's video, we are going to talk all about the speaking exam and how you can get a 7 or higher on this exam with some really interesting strategies. I was very surprised. We're going to explain how the speaking exam is structured and everything you need to know so that you feel very comfortable on exam day. Let's get started.
What would you say are like the most common mistakes that people make that gives them a lower score, or some easy ways that people can increase their score?
Yeah, for sure. Well, as far as speaking and writing goes, you really have to understand what the examiner is looking for, because there have been native speakers that take the exam and they don't do really well in writing task 1 because they don't know how to describe these numbers. And then they don't score all 9s in speaking also because, again, like they don't know what the examiner is looking for. So if you are preparing, you really need to be learning from someone with intimate knowledge of the exam. And everything you're doing has to be linked to the scoring system in some way. So like in our course, I'm very explicit about how to get a 7, how to get an 8, like all of these things are defined and then broken down. So you work on specific skills always connected to the scoring system. And then for listening and reading, you need solid strategies. I just recorded a podcast this morning with a student in our course who got 8.5 in listening and reading and speaking, and he got a 7 in writing. So
Awesome.
like those are amazing scores.
Yes, that's amazing.
It's incredible. So like he was saying, for listening, it's really important to have these fundamentals, right? So like the listening strategies are simple but necessary, because if you don't like underline the keywords, focus on those, follow along, like practice the same system over and over again, then if you miss an answer, you're going to panic and freak out, and then you're going to lose the whole rest of the section. So we really need just these basic fundamentals to fall back on. And for reading, it's all about strategies. The reading exam, it's not about your comprehension. Like you can't read the whole passage and then like respond with your opinion or whatever. So it's not truly a reading test. It's like, It's a test of your time-saving strategies. So reading is the most important one to have strategies. Like, for example, matching headings to paragraphs. This is one of the most difficult question types for a lot of students, but it actually should be the fastest because headings are main ideas, right? So they're like 90% of the answers are going to be in the beginning and the end of the paragraph. So knowing where to expect the answer, not wasting your time reading too much, these are the keys to finishing like all 40 answers in 60 minutes. Because like I said, like even a native speaker does not always score a 9 on the reading exam because they don't go in with strategies. They're just like, I speak English, I'll be fine. And then they can't finish because they're like reading every word and like being very careful. So yeah, reading, it's all about time-saving strategies.
It's very true. All these tests, it's a lot of like, how well can you take a test and how fast can you be, which is really, it's very difficult for a lot of people. So it's not just enough to know how to speak English. You need to really know the tests inside and out. Speaking exam. So some people are very worried about their pronunciation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I have heard that like improving your pronunciation is one of the, I don't know, maybe the easiest ways to increase your score on the speaking exam. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. Our goal is to be as efficient and effective as we can in our IELTS preparation, right? So I don't waste time on grammar. Like that's the first thing. It takes students seriously like a year to improve their grammar score by a whole band point, okay? So my advice is to focus on the other categories, and pronunciation is definitely the easiest category to improve your score. It's not about speaking English perfectly, right? Like there's no perfect accent these days because it is an international language, right? So there's not like an accent that you have to adopt. Right. You have to be understood, but you can do that and still have a Brazilian accent, right? You could even mispronounce some of the sounds. That's fine. The way that you increase your score to a 7 or higher is by showing personality, is by having emotion on the IELTS exam. So when I work with students one-on-one, part of it is finding their personal strategy for how to hit that 7 or higher for pronunciation, finding what they are most comfortable speaking about. So like for one student, it might be her job, right? Like when she talks about her job, her vocabulary is better, her pronunciation is more confident, right? So that's like a go-to strategy. I was talking to a Japanese student yesterday, and her intonation was always the same. It was like duh, 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 duh. Like every sentence sounded exactly the same. But when she started describing her family and like the love of being at home with her parents, when she started talking about that, her pronunciation, her vocabulary, her fluency and coherence scores went up by a whole band point, like right away. So we found that like if you're able to work that into your answer, do that because you'll get a higher score. So yeah, finding your passion and letting these emotions show on the exam is necessary to getting a 7 or higher.
Now, that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think when people are a little bit nervous, especially in this testing environment, they might respond in a little bit more monotonous way, mechanical way. And that's great, because you're basically saying like, no, like speak from the heart, you know, like talk about things that, you know, light you up and get you excited and show that emotion. And usually when you are that excited, you forget about the anxiety producing situation, because you're focusing on the content. And you're not thinking about, oh my God, what are they thinking about me? Am I saying this correctly? Yeah. You're just like speaking and letting it flow, and you make a lot less mistakes in that situation.
For sure. You know, like speaking part 1, these questions are about you. Like, what do you enjoy doing with your friends? So if you answer this with like academic words and it's not appropriate. It doesn't make sense. That's not fluent, right? Like the test is just, it's grading your ability to communicate, right? So that communication has to be as natural as possible. So if it's an informal question, your answer has to use informal vocabulary, relaxed, excited pronunciation, right? It just has to fit with the question. Like the tone is very important.
That's great. I know with some like writing tasks and even some speaking tasks, at least as teachers from what I've read, we're encouraged to tell them like, okay, answer the question, then like support your answer with maybe some examples or stories, and then kind of like in this neat little organized package, like, and deliver it this way, which can be great, because sometimes people tend to go off on tangents and they don't even answer the question. But then sometimes I fear that maybe it's making them think too like unnaturally, if they're trying to say like, yes, I like school, reason 1, boom, reason 2, and then it's not so natural.
Yeah, no, totally. In part 1, I don't recommend any organization for part 1. I help students brainstorm ideas, right, that they could use, and tell them like the recommended, you know, amount of time to answer so you can fit everything in. And part 2, the only structure that we talk about is how to tell a story, because that's the best way to like fluently and coherently fill that 2 minutes. So strategically, that's how we look at that. Part 3, as you said, we do have a stricter organization for part 3, because those are harder questions and they are formal and academic questions. So having a structure does make sense. Like it is appropriate for that. And plus part 3 is students get freaked out because they're like tough questions that they don't normally even talk about in their first language. So having this structure to fall back on is really important, or else they'll pause and stammer, go off topic, repeat themselves. So we do practice like a basic organizational strategy for that.
Okay, but that's good to kind of divide it at least into those 3 parts and practice with the students in that way. So like the first one, just talk, let it go, don't worry about it. The second one, you know, tell a story maybe about it. And then the third one, be a little bit more strategic or more formal maybe with your response. And they all have different time limits. Is that correct?
Yeah, so speaking part 1 is 4 to 5 minutes. Part 2 is 3 to 4 minutes. Within that, you have 1 minute to take notes and 2 minutes to talk. And part 3 is also 4 to 5 minutes. So the examiner has a certain number of questions they are required to ask you within that time. So that's where the strategy is important, because if you talk too long, then the examiner has to interrupt you, and it makes it like awkward for both the candidate and the examiner. If the examiner's always like, okay, thank you, like it's weird. So like being able to practice that, and so you know what to expect on exam day, like that timing is important too.
Yeah, and actually just practicing, I think, being timed. It's weird, but it's good because we don't really know how long we talk for. We may feel like we're talking for 5 minutes, but it's really only been 30 seconds. And then you're like, oh my God, I have to talk for another 3 minutes. I don't know what to say. So I think just practicing speaking for a specific set of time is really important.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to watch the third and final video. You can watch it right here, in which we talk all about the writing exam. And this is a very, very important part of the exam. And in this video, Jessica shares with us some really great strategies on how to get a 7 or higher. And we also learn about her 3 Keys IELTS course, which is a fantastic course if you are interested in studying for the IELTS exam. Once again, all the links to the resources that we mentioned are found in the description below. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and share this with your friends. If you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to subscribe in my channel. And remember, if you have any questions, ask Jackie. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.